Billionaire froze on the boardwalk when she saw a single father and his little girl selling cookies. The Pacific wind carried the scent of salt and sunscreen through the open windows of the penthouse suite at the Broken Heart Resort, a name Celeste Davenport had always found grimly appropriate. She stood on the balcony of her corner office, surveying the private beach below where families splashed in the surf and couples walked hand in hand along the shore. From 16 floors up, their joy looked like something from another world, a watercolor painting she could admire but never touch. At 27, Celeste commanded an empire of 12 coastal hotels stretching from San Diego to Seattle. The Melbrook Collection, named after her late grandmother Melanie Brooklyn Davenport, represented the finest in luxury hospitality, each property a jewel studded along America's western edge. She wore her success like armor, a royal blue blazer tailored to perfection, denim beach shorts that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and Italian leather sandals in matching azure. Her long blonde hair caught the sunlight as she turned, and her blue eyes, the same color as the ocean she'd grown up beside, reflected none of the warmth of the water below. "Ms. Davenport?" Her assistant Mariella's voice crackled through the intercom. "The quarterly reports are ready for your review. Send them up," Celeste replied, her voice carrying the crisp efficiency that had earned her respect in boardrooms across the country. At an age when most of her former classmates were still climbing corporate ladders, she sat at the top of her own. The price of that throne? She lived alone in a mansion that echoed with emptiness, slept in a king-sized bed that felt vast as an ocean, and couldn't remember the last time someone had touched her without wanting something in return. Her divorce from Marcus Sutherland III had been finalized 8 months ago. 2 years of marriage to a man who loved her portfolio more than her person had taught Celeste that loneliness wasn't about being alone. It was about being unseen by the person sleeping beside you. Marcus had wanted a trophy, an ornament to display at fundraisers and yacht clubs. When she refused to be diminished, he'd found someone more willing to play that role. The intercom buzzed again. "Also, there's a situation at the south entrance. Security called about a vendor without proper permits." Celeste sighed. The Broken Heart Resort attracted beach vendors like flies to honey, people selling everything from handmade jewelry to airbrushed t-shirts. Most understood the boundaries. Those who didn't received a polite but firm escort from the property. "Have security handle it." They tried. "The gentleman is persistent. He has his daughter with him. Security thought you might want to." "Fine." Celeste cut her off, already moving toward the elevator. In her experience, the presence of a child usually meant someone desperate enough to ignore the rules. She could spare 5 minutes to resolve this personally, reinforcing to her team that she didn't hide behind her desk when difficult situations arose. The elevator descended with smooth efficiency, passing floors dedicated to luxury suites, the spa, the restaurant, and the conference center. Celeste used the time to check her phone. 3 missed calls from her mother in Palm Springs, each undoubtedly about Celeste's responsibility to provide grandchildren before her biological clock ran out. Delete, delete, delete. Her mother had been relentless since the divorce. Every conversation circled back to the same themes: Celeste's advancing age, her empty mansion, her unnatural focus on career over family, as if success and motherhood were mutually exclusive, as if a woman couldn't be complete without a husband and children. Celeste had tried explaining that she'd been married, that it had been a disaster, that she was perfectly content running her business empire. Her mother refused to hear it. "You're hiding," her mother had said during their last conversation, using work as an excuse to avoid the messy, beautiful business of actually living. The accusation had stung precisely because it contained a kernel of truth. When was the last time Celeste had done something that didn't involve business? When had she last laughed until her stomach hurt, or stayed up talking until dawn, or felt her heart race with something other than caffeine? The elevator doors opened to reveal the grand lobby, all marble and gold fixtures and wall-sized windows overlooking the Pacific. Guests milled about in vacation clothes, skin pink from sun exposure, carrying shopping bags and beach toys. Children chased each other around the enormous fountain at the center of the space, their laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Families, couples, people who belonged to each other in ways Celeste had never quite managed. She navigated through them with practiced ease, her heels clicking against the marble as she headed toward the south entrance. A few guests recognized her and nodded respectfully. The Davenport name carried weight in this world. Her grandmother had built the first Melbrook Hotel 60 years ago, transforming a struggling seaside inn into a luxury destination. 3 generations of Davenport women had expanded that legacy, and Celeste had inherited not just the business but the expectation that she would surpass them all. Some days that weight felt like armor. Today, it felt like chains. She could see the commotion before she reached it. Two security guards flanking a man whose back was turned to her. Between them stood a small blonde girl in a yellow sundress, clutching a wicker basket to her chest. The child couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, her cheeks flushed from the heat, her hair pulled back in 2 braids that hung down her back. "Sir, I've explained this 3 times now," one of the guards was saying, his voice strained with patience. "You need a vendor's license to sell on hotel property. If you'd like to apply, I understand that," the man replied, and something about his voice made Celeste's steps falter. It was deep and warm, with a rough edge that suggested hard work and harder days. "But the permit office won't process applications until Monday, and we need—" He stopped abruptly as the little girl tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, it's okay," she said quietly. "We can go somewhere else." Daddy. The word hit Celeste with unexpected force. She'd been prepared for a scam artist or an opportunist. She hadn't been prepared for the naked love in that single word, or the way the man's shoulders sagged at his daughter's acceptance of defeat. "No, baby girl," he said gently. "We're not giving up. We're just figuring out the rules." Celeste took another step forward, and the man must have sensed her approach because he turned. Their eyes met, and the world tilted on its axis. Ryan Walker. The name exploded in her mind like a firework, bringing with it a cascade of memories she'd buried so deep she'd almost convinced herself they belonged to someone else. Ryan at 17, his dark hair always slightly too long, his hands perpetually stained with motor oil from the bikes he worked on after school. Ryan, who'd kissed her for the first time behind the gym at Ocean View High, who'd made her laugh until her stomach hurt, who'd promised they'd find a way to make it work when she left for Stanford, and he stayed behind to help his sick mother. Ryan, who she'd loved with the fierce, all-consuming passion of first love. Ryan, who she'd broken up with in a phone call from her dorm room because long distance was too hard, and college was too demanding, and she'd been young and stupid and scared. Ryan, who was standing in her hotel lobby with a child who called him Daddy. Celeste? His voice cracked on her name, and she saw her own shock mirrored in his brown eyes. Those eyes. She'd never forgotten them. They'd haunted her through 2 degrees, a corporate merger, and a marriage that should have erased all thoughts of the boy she'd left behind. Except Ryan Walker wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man, tall and lean, with the kind of muscle that came from actual labor rather than gym memberships. His skin was deeply tanned, his hands rough and calloused. He wore a faded blue t-shirt and jeans that had seen better days, and his dark hair was cut shorter than she remembered, but still had that unruly wave that used to fall across his forehead. But it was more than physical changes. There was a hardness to him now, a weathered quality that came from disappointment and struggle. The Ryan she'd known had been full of restless energy and wild optimism, always believing that talent and determination could overcome any obstacle. This Ryan looked like someone who'd learned that sometimes talent wasn't enough, that determination couldn't pay the bills, that the world didn't care about dreams when rent was due. His jaw was more defined now, his shoulders broader. There was a scar along his left forearm that hadn't been there before, a jagged white line against his tan skin. His hands, once stained with motor oil from tinkering with bikes he couldn't afford to buy, were now marked with calluses and small cuts that spoke of desperation rather than passion. He'd been fixing things because he loved it. Now he fixed things because he had to. And yet beneath all that hardness, Celeste could still see traces of the boy she'd loved. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he was stressed, the slight tilt of his head when processing something unexpected, the protective way he'd positioned himself slightly in front of his daughter the moment Celeste had approached. "Ryan." Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, too breathless, too affected. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I didn't realize you were back in town." "I never left," he said, and there was something in his tone, not quite bitter, but close, that made her wince. "You're the one who went away." The accusation hung between them, sharp and undeniable. And it was true. She'd been the one to leave, driving away from Ocean View in her new BMW, a graduation gift from her parents, with all her belongings packed, and a Stanford acceptance letter on the passenger seat. She'd been the one to make promises about staying in touch, about making long-distance work, about love conquering all obstacles. And she'd been the one to break those promises 6 months later, calling Ryan from her dorm room to explain that she'd met someone else. A lie, that they wanted different things, partially true, that it was better to end it cleanly, cowardice masquerading as mercy. She'd heard through mutual friends that he'd taken it hard, that he'd stopped going out for weeks, stopped working on his bike, stopped writing the stories that Mrs. Henderson had said showed real promise. She'd felt guilty about it for months, then years, until the guilt had faded into a dull ache she'd learned to ignore. Looking at him now, seeing the evidence of a hard life etched into his face, Celeste wondered if she'd ever really understood the full cost of her decision. She'd gone on to Stanford, then Harvard Business School, then taken over her grandmother's company and built it into something extraordinary. What had Ryan done? Stayed here in Ocean View, married a woman named Sarah, had a daughter, buried his wife, lost his job, and ended up selling cookies in hotel parking lots just to survive. Her choices had led to empire building. His choices, or maybe her choices for him, had led to survival mode. The security guards looked between them, clearly confused by this turn of events. The little girl stared up at Celeste with wide brown eyes identical to her father's, her small face serious and assessing in the way children have when they sense adult tension, but don't understand its source. Celeste forced herself into professional mode, the armor she wore in every business meeting and board negotiation. I see you're having a problem with permits. Perhaps we could discuss this in my office? We don't need charity, Ryan said quickly, his jaw tightening. We just need a fair chance to sell our cookies. We'll move to public property if that's what— It's 104 degrees out there, Celeste interrupted, glancing at the child whose face was already showing signs of heat exhaustion. Come to my office. We'll figure something out. She saw him struggling with his pride, saw the war playing out across his features. Finally, he looked down at his daughter. What do you think, Hannibal? Should we talk to the nice lady? Hannibal. The name suited her, old-fashioned and sweet. The little girl nodded solemnly. She has kind eyes, Daddy. Something cracked in Celeste's chest, a fissure in the armor she'd spent years constructing. When was the last time anyone had looked at her and seen kindness rather than dollar signs? Okay then, Ryan said, his voice gentler now. He placed a protective hand on Hannah's shoulder. Lead the way. The ride up in the elevator was suffocating with unspoken words. Celeste stood on one side, Ryan and Hannah on the other, the mirrored walls multiplying their images into infinity. A blonde woman in designer clothes, a working man in worn denim, a child clutching a basket of homemade cookies. The universe's cruelest joke, reflected endlessly. Celeste studied their reflection, trying to see what an outsider would see. A successful businesswoman helping a down-on-his-luck vendor, a former flame haunted by what-ifs, or just three people trapped in an elevator, each carrying their own burdens? Ryan kept his eyes fixed on the floor numbers ticking upward, his jaw tight. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand rested protectively on Hannah's head. He was uncomfortable, not just with the situation, but with the visual reminder of how far their paths had diverged. She belonged in spaces like this. Sleek, expensive, exclusive. He didn't, and they both knew it. And Hannah, oblivious to the adult tension, pressed her face close to the mirrored wall, making funny faces at her reflection. She stuck out her tongue, crossed her eyes, puffed out her cheeks. Simple, childish joy, untainted by the complicated history between her father and this strange woman who'd swooped in to help them. Hannibal, Ryan said quietly, a gentle correction. Manners. Sorry, Daddy. But Hannah kept sneaking glances at her reflection, unable to resist the novelty of seeing herself from so many angles. Celeste found herself smiling despite the tension. It's okay. I used to do the same thing when I was her age. My grandmother would bring me to the hotel during construction, and I'd spend hours in the elevators making faces. Ryan glanced at her, surprise flickering across his features. I didn't know you came here as a kid. Every summer, my grandmother believed in teaching me the business from the ground up. I started as a housekeeping assistant when I was 14, worked my way through every department. She gestured around the elevator. I probably polished these mirrors 100 times. But you're rich, Hannah said with the blunt honesty of childhood. Why would you have to work? Because having money doesn't mean you don't need to understand how things work, Celeste explained. My grandmother always said that if you couldn't do every job in your hotel, you had no business managing it. Ryan's expression shifted, something like respect replacing the earlier wariness. Smart woman, your grandmother. She was the smartest person I ever knew. Celeste felt the familiar ache of loss. Her grandmother had died 3 years ago, leaving Celeste the business and a letter that she still hadn't been able to finish reading. The parts she had read haunted her, warnings about sacrificing too much for success, about building empires but forgetting to build a life, about the danger of measuring worth in dollars rather than relationships. Melanie Brooklyn Davenport had built an empire, yes, but she'd also had a husband who adored her, 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and a legacy of love alongside her legacy of wealth. What did Celeste have? An ex-husband who'd married his assistant 6 weeks after their divorce was finalized, no children, and the uncomfortable knowledge that if she died tomorrow, her obituary would read like a resume rather than a life well lived. Hannah broke the silence. "This is the fanciest elevator I've ever been in," she said, her voice filled with innocent wonder. "It's like we're in a rocket ship going to the stars." Despite everything, Celeste smiled. "I never thought of it that way, but you're right. It does feel like that." "Hannah has a good imagination," Ryan said quietly, pride evident in his voice. "She wants to be a writer someday. Already fills notebooks with stories about princesses and dragons. Just like her father," Celeste said before she could stop herself. "You used to write those incredible stories for English class. Mrs. Henderson said you had the soul of a poet." Ryan's expression shuddered. That was a long time ago. People change. The elevator dinged, saving her from having to respond. She led them down the hallway to her office, acutely aware of Ryan taking in the artwork on the walls, the plush carpeting, the signs of wealth that separated their worlds. She unlocked her door and gestured them inside. Hannah's gasp of delight was immediate. The little girl ran to the floor-to-ceiling windows, pressing her hands against the glass to stare down at the beach. "Daddy, look. You can see the whole ocean. It's like being a bird." Ryan stayed near the door, his body language screaming discomfort. Celeste understood. This room represented everything he'd never had, would never have. The custom desk alone probably cost more than he made in 6 months. "Please sit," Celeste said, gesturing to the leather couch along one wall. She moved to the small refrigerator hidden in a cabinet and pulled out 3 bottles of water. "You both look like you could use these." Hannah accepted hers gratefully, twisting off the cap and drinking deeply. Ryan took his but didn't open it, his eyes fixed on Celeste with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "So," she said, settling into the chair across from them and trying to find solid ground in this surreal situation. "Why don't you tell me what's going on?" Ryan's jaw clenched. "We don't need your pity." "I'm not offering pity. I'm offering to listen." For a long moment he didn't speak. Then Hannah, with the frank honesty of children, said, "Daddy lost his job at the factory 3 months ago. We're selling cookies to pay for rent and food. Daddy makes the best chocolate chip cookies in the whole world." Ryan closed his eyes briefly, and Celeste saw the shame wash over him, the humiliation of having his 7-year-old explain their poverty to his ex-girlfriend. When he opened them again, his voice was steady despite the muscle ticking in his jaw. "The automotive plant closed down. 200 workers laid off overnight. I've been applying everywhere, but there aren't a lot of jobs for mechanics in a town full of luxury resorts." The bitter irony wasn't lost on either of them. "Hannah and I are managing. The cookies are just temporary until something better comes along." Celeste looked at the little girl, saw the sunburn on her cheeks, the way she held her basket like it contained treasure rather than baked goods they were desperate to sell. "Where's Hannah's mother?" Something flickered across Ryan's face. Grief, anger, something darker. "Sarah died 4 years ago. Cancer. It was fast. I'm so sorry." The words felt inadequate, hollow. Celeste's mind raced, trying to reconcile this information with her memories. Ryan had married someone named Sarah, had a child, lost his wife, been unemployed for months, all while she'd been in boardrooms and on magazine covers, insulated from the real struggles of the world below her tower. "We're okay," Ryan said firmly, as if saying it enough times would make it true. "We just need the permit situation sorted out so we can sell in public spaces without getting hassled." Celeste made a decision. "I can do better than that. The resort hosts a farmer's market every Saturday morning. Local vendors, artisan products, that sort of thing. We could waive the booth fee for you. It's prime tourist traffic and people love homemade cookies." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "Why would you do that?" "Because you're here and real, and I've spent 7 years pretending I didn't make the worst mistake of my life when I let you go. Because your daughter has your eyes and your smile, and something about her makes my empty mansion feel even emptier. Because I'm so tired of being alone. Because it's good business," she said instead, keeping her voice level and professional. "Quality products, local vendors, it fits our brand, plus Hannah's right. If your cookies are as good as you both claim, our guests will love them." Hannah bounced excitedly on the couch. "Really? We can sell at the farmer's market? Daddy, did you hear that?" Ryan didn't take his eyes off Celeste. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Just business." She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to her events coordinator. "I'm having the details sent to your email. You'll need to pass a basic health inspection. Standard procedure, but I can have someone expedite that this afternoon if you're available." "Today's Friday," Ryan said slowly, as if working through a puzzle. "The market is tomorrow morning." "Correct. That's convenient timing." Celeste shrugged, maintaining her business facade even as her heart hammered against her ribs. I've learned that opportunities don't wait for convenient timing. You either take them or lose them. The words hung between them, heavy with double meaning. Ryan finally opened his water bottle and took a long drink, his throat working. When he looked at her again, something had shifted in his expression. Okay, he said quietly. We'll do it. Thank you. Hannah launched herself at Celeste, wrapping small arms around her waist before anyone could react. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're like a fairy godmother. Celeste froze, overwhelmed by the simple gesture. When was the last time someone had hugged her with pure, uncomplicated affection? She carefully placed her hands on Hannah's small back, feeling the warmth of the child through her thin sundress. You're welcome, sweetheart, she managed, her voice rough. Ryan gently extracted his daughter. Hannabelle, we talked about personal space, remember? But she helped us, Daddy. Hannah looked up at Celeste with absolute trust. Good people deserve hugs. Something inside Celeste's chest twisted painfully. Your daughter is very wise. She gets that from her mother, Ryan said softly, and for a moment the bitterness faded from his face, replaced by a grief so profound it took Celeste's breath away. He cleared his throat. We should go. The health inspector will want to see our kitchen set up and we need to prepare. Celeste walked them to the elevator, her mind spinning. She had Ryan Walker's phone number in her contacts now, forwarded by her assistant. She'd see him tomorrow at the farmer's market. He was back in her life after 7 years of absence, and nothing about this felt like coincidence. As the elevator doors began to close, Hannah waved enthusiastically. Bye, fairy godmother. Ryan didn't wave. He just looked at her with those deep brown eyes that had once promised her forever, and she saw something there that terrified her. A mixture of old affection and new resentment, of doors that could still open and bridges already burned. When the elevator disappeared from view, Celeste returned to her office and stood at the window watching the beach below. Somewhere out there, Ryan was probably loading his daughter into whatever vehicle he could afford, driving to whatever small apartment they called home, preparing cookie dough in a kitchen Celeste couldn't imagine. She pulled out her phone and typed his name into the search bar, something she'd forbidden herself from doing for years. The results were sparse. A few social media profiles set to private, an obituary for Sarah Walker that listed her surviving husband and daughter, an old article about the automotive plant closure that mentioned him among the laid-off workers. Nothing about the boy she'd known. Nothing about the stories he'd written or the dreams he'd shared with her on late-night drives along the coast. Nothing about the Ryan who'd fixed her car when it broke down and refused payment, who'd taught her to appreciate poetry by reading Bukowski aloud in his gravelly voice, who'd made love to her in the back of his pickup truck under stars that seemed close enough to touch. That Ryan had been full of hope and possibility. This Ryan looked like someone who'd survived rather than lived, who'd learned that the world wasn't kind to dreamers. And Celeste, who'd taken her hope and possibility and turned them into a business empire, who'd traded love for security and passion for stability, wondered if there was any universe where they'd both made different choices. Her phone buzzed. Her mother again. Celeste let it go to voicemail. The next morning arrived wrapped in coastal fog that would burn off by 9 o'clock. Celeste stood in front of her walk-in closet, staring at racks of designer clothing that suddenly felt like costumes. Who was she trying to be today? The billionaire heiress who'd earned her fortune? The professional hotelier who commanded respect? The 27-year-old woman who couldn't stop thinking about the man selling cookies to feed his daughter? She settled on white linen pants and a flowing azure top, elegant but understated. She left her hair down. Ryan had always loved her hair down. Then she caught herself in that thought and almost changed outfits entirely. This wasn't about Ryan. This was about supporting a local vendor at her resort's farmer's market. Professional, businesslike, completely appropriate. The lies we tell ourselves, she thought, slipping on simple sandals and heading downstairs. Her mansion felt particularly empty this morning, all 8,000 square feet of it. The kitchen alone was bigger than some people's entire homes, with its commercial-grade appliances and marble countertops that had never seen homemade cookies cooling on their surface. Celeste grabbed a coffee from her espresso machine, an Italian import that cost more than Ryan probably made in 2 months, and headed out to her car. The drive to the resort took 15 minutes. The farmer's market setup was already underway when she arrived, vendors arranging their booths in neat rows along the east courtyard. Organic vegetables, artisan cheeses, handcrafted soaps, local honey, fresh flowers. And there, near the back corner, Ryan and Hannah were setting up a simple folding table covered with a red and white checkered cloth. Celeste parked and made her way over, trying to ignore how her heart rate increased with each step. Ryan wore clean jeans and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms roped with muscle and scattered with small scars, evidence of a life spent working with his hands. Hannah bounced around in a pink sundress, her blonde braids tied with matching ribbons. "Good morning," Celeste said, approaching their booth. Ryan looked up from arranging plastic containers of cookies, his expression carefully neutral. "Morning. Thanks again for the opportunity." Up close, in better light, Celeste could see the details she'd missed yesterday, the fine lines around Ryan's eyes that spoke of stress and sleepless nights. The way his shirt, though clean and pressed, was slightly frayed at the collar, the calluses on his hands as he handled each container with care. "Can I try a cookie?" she asked. Hannah immediately grabbed one and offered it with both hands, as if presenting a sacred gift. "This is Daddy's special recipe. It has sea salt on top." Celeste bit into it and had to suppress a moan. The cookie was perfect. Crispy edges, chewy center, rich chocolate balanced by a hint of salt that elevated it beyond ordinary. "Ryan, this is incredible. Thanks." He didn't quite meet her eyes. "Sarah taught me. She was the baker in the family." There it was again. Sarah. The ghost in their conversation. Celeste found herself wondering what Sarah had been like. Had she been kind, beautiful? Had she made Ryan happy in ways Celeste never could have? "Well, your customers are lucky," Celeste said, stepping back as early shoppers began filtering into the market. "I should let you get ready." "Actually," Hannah piped up, "could you help us for a bit? Daddy says we need someone to attract customers and you're really pretty and fancy." Ryan looked mortified. "Hannah Bell, we talked about this." "It's okay," Celeste interrupted, surprising herself. "I have an hour before my next meeting. I'd be happy to help." The look Ryan gave her was complicated, grateful and suspicious in equal measure. "You don't have to." "I know." She moved behind the table, positioning herself next to Hannah. "But I want to." And she did want to. For the next hour, Celeste Davenport, hotel heiress, business mogul, member of 3 boards and charity committees, sold homemade cookies from a folding table. She chatted with customers, made change, helped Hannah wrap cookies in tissue paper, and watched Ryan interact with people who had no idea who he'd once been in her life. He was good with customers, patient and friendly, with an easy smile that transformed his face from hard to handsome. He joked with the kids who came by, offered samples generously, and treated every person with the same genuine warmth regardless of whether they bought cookies or just browsed. "You're a natural at this," Celeste observed during a lull. Ryan shrugged. "Years of working retail and customer service. You learn to read people, figure out what they need. Is that what you're doing with me? Reading what I need?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and his voice dropped low enough that only she could hear. "I don't need to read you, Celeste. I remember what you need. The question is whether you've changed." Before she could respond, a woman in a tennis outfit approached, eyeing their cookies. Ryan shifted back into salesman mode, leaving Celeste to process the weight of his words. "I remember what you need," did he? Did he remember the girl who'd cried in his arms about the pressure of family expectations? Who'd confessed her fear of becoming just another shallow rich kid? Who'd sworn she wanted more from life than country clubs and trust funds? That girl had failed, hadn't she? She'd become exactly what she'd feared. Successful but empty, wealthy but alone. By the time Celeste's meeting approached, Ryan and Hannah had sold nearly 70% of their inventory. Hannah danced around the booth, counting bills with Ryan's help, her face glowing with pride. "We did it, Daddy. We really did it." Ryan hugged his daughter close, and Celeste saw the relief in his shoulders, the way tension drained from his body. This morning's sales probably meant food for the week, maybe enough to keep the lights on in their apartment. "I should go," Celeste said, reluctantly stepping out from behind the table. "But you two were amazing today. The customers loved the cookies. Thank you for helping," Ryan said, and this time his voice carried genuine warmth. "I know you didn't have to. Maybe I wanted to." She hesitated, then added, "The market runs every Saturday. If you'd like a permanent spot, I can make it happen." "We'll see how things go," Ryan replied, non-committal. He was protecting himself, she realized, not letting himself depend on her generosity because he remembered what it felt like when she left. Hannah had no such reservations. She grabbed Celeste's hand, her small fingers sticky with chocolate. "Will you come back next week, please? It's more fun when you're here." Celeste's throat tightened. "I'll try, sweetheart." As she walked back to her car, she felt Ryan's gaze on her back. She didn't turn around. If she did, she might do something foolish like ask him to coffee or dinner, or to explain what had happened to them in the years between then and now. The rest of her Saturday passed in a blur of meetings and paperwork. But that evening, alone in her mansion, Celeste found herself baking. She hadn't baked anything in years. Her kitchen was more showpiece than workspace. But she dug out flour and sugar and chocolate chips from the pantry and followed a recipe on her phone. The cookies came out terrible. Burnt on the edges, raw in the middle. Nothing like Ryan's perfect creations. She ate one anyway, standing at her counter in the vast, silent kitchen, and laughed at the absurdity of it all. Somewhere across town, Ryan and Hannah were probably eating dinner together, sharing stories about their day, existing in a world Celeste had voluntarily exited 7 years ago. She'd chosen ambition over love, success over happiness, and now she had everything she'd worked for and nothing she'd dreamed of. Her phone rang. Her mother again. This time, Celeste answered. Finally, her mother sighed. I've been trying to reach you for days. I've been busy, Mom. Too busy for family? Celeste, we need to talk about your future. You're 27 years old, divorced, and spending all your time working. Your father and I are worried. Celeste leaned against the counter, too tired to fight this battle again. There's nothing to worry about. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're lonely. When was the last time you went on a date? Met someone who wasn't connected to business? Today, she thought. Today I reconnected with the only man I ever truly loved, and he's selling cookies with his daughter to survive. I don't have time for dating. You need to make time. Life isn't all about quarterly reports and profit margins. You need connection, Celeste. You need family. I have family. I have you and Dad. You need your own family. A husband, children, something more than that empty house and that lonely job. Celeste closed her eyes. The job isn't lonely, Mom. It's fulfilling. Then why do you sound so sad? Because I saw the life I could have had today, and it was wearing worn jeans and had chocolate on its cheeks. Because I chose this life and now I'm stuck with it. Because starting over at 27 feels impossible when you've built your entire identity around success. I'm just tired, Celeste said instead. I should go. Think about what I said. You deserve happiness, sweetheart. Real happiness. After her mother hung up, Celeste stood in her kitchen, surrounded by marble and stainless steel and emptiness, and admitted a truth she'd been avoiding for months. She was lonely. Desperately, achingly lonely in a way her divorce from Marcus had only highlighted. She'd been lonely in her marriage, lonely in her success, lonely in this beautiful mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. She thought about Hannah's sticky fingers clasped around hers, about the way Ryan had smiled at his daughter with such pure, uncomplicated love, about the cookies she'd helped sell and how for 1 hour, she'd felt useful in a way boardroom victories never provided. Then she thought about the look in Ryan's eyes when he'd said he remembered what she needed, like he could still see her, the real her, beneath all the armor and designer clothes. She cleaned up her baking disaster and went to bed, but sleep was elusive. She kept replaying the morning over and over, analyzing every word, every glance, every moment of connection and disconnection. Around midnight, her phone buzzed with an email. She almost ignored it, but the subject line caught her attention. Saturday market vendor follow-up. It was from Ryan, sent to her business email. Formal, professional, exactly what their interaction should be. Ms. Davenport, thank you for the opportunity at today's farmer's market. Hannah and I are very grateful for your generosity. We would like to accept the permanent booth offer if it still stands. Please let me know the next steps. Regards, Ryan Walker. Ms. Davenport. Regards. Every word carefully chosen to maintain distance, to keep this transaction purely business. Celeste stared at the email for a long time before responding. Mr. Walker, I'm pleased to confirm your permanent booth at the farmer's market. My events coordinator will send the official contract on Monday. Looking forward to many successful Saturdays ahead. Best, Celeste. She almost signed it, Celeste Davenport, to match his formality but couldn't bring herself to do it. Some small part of her needed him to remember they'd once been on a first-name basis, that they'd once been so much more. After hitting send, she set her phone aside and stared at the ceiling. This was dangerous territory, not because Ryan had asked for anything, but because Celeste found herself wanting to give everything, to fix his problems, to ease his burden, to insert herself into his life and Hannah's in ways that went far beyond business relationships. But she'd already hurt him once. She'd chosen her future over their present. Ambition over love. What right did she have to waltz back into his life now that it suited her? What made her think she could be anything other than a reminder of what he'd lost when she left? The questions followed her into restless sleep, and when she woke Sunday morning, she had no answers. Only the certainty that seeing Ryan Walker again had cracked something open inside her, something that had been sealed shut for 7 years. and she had no idea if that crack would let in light or just make room for more pain. Monday morning brought its usual avalanche of responsibilities. Celeste threw herself into work. Conference calls, property inspections, personnel issues, the never-ending demand of running a hospitality empire. It was easier to focus on profit margins than to think about brown eyes and homemade cookies. But Hannah Bell had other plans. The first letter arrived Tuesday morning, delivered to Celeste's office in a pink envelope with careful, childish handwriting on the front. Mariella brought it in with the Daily Mail, her expression curious. "This came addressed to you personally," she said. "It's adorable." Inside, on paper decorated with hand-drawn flowers, Hannah had written, "Dear Fairy Godmother, thank you for helping me and Daddy. We made $847 on Saturday. Daddy cried happy tears when he counted the money. He didn't think I saw, but I did. You made my daddy happy. That makes you magic. Can I ask you something? Do you like chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin better? Daddy wants to make different kinds, but I think chocolate chip is best. What do you think? Your friend, Hannah Bell Walker, P.S. Daddy says, I can't call you Fairy Godmother, but I think it fits." Celeste read the letter 3 times, each reading hitting her harder than the last. Ryan had cried. This proud, stubborn man who'd rather struggle than accept help had cried with relief at making enough money to get through another week. She pulled out her personal stationery and wrote back immediately, "Dear Hannah Bell, chocolate chip cookies are absolutely the best, but oatmeal raisin has its place too. Maybe your dad could make both and let customers decide. I'm so glad Saturday went well. You and your father worked very hard and you deserve success. Tell your dad I'm not a fairy godmother, just someone who appreciates good cookies. Your friend, Celeste P.S. But between us, I kind of like the nickname." She had Mariella send it directly to Ryan's address, which she definitely didn't obtain by looking up his vendor application. Definitely not. The letters became a regular thing. Every few days a pink envelope would arrive with Hannah's latest thoughts. Questions about the ocean, stories about her school, updates on the cookie business. And every time, Celeste wrote back, finding herself looking forward to those messy, heartfelt missives more than any board meeting. She learned that Hannah loved mermaids and horses, that her favorite color was yellow like sunshine, that she wanted to visit Paris someday because her teacher said that's where writers went. She learned that Ryan made spaghetti every Tuesday because it was Hannah's favorite, that they went to the library every Thursday afternoon, that Hannah sometimes talked to her mom at night even though she knew Sarah couldn't answer. Ryan never wrote, but his presence echoed through Hannah's words. The father who read to her every night, who helped with homework, who made pancakes on Sunday mornings shaped like animals. A father who was doing his best with limited resources and infinite love. The following Saturday, Celeste arrived at the farmer's market to find their booth already set up. This time Ryan had brought a small chalkboard sign advertising their prices, and Hannah had drawn elaborate cookies around the edges with colored chalk. "Morning," Ryan said when he spotted her. His tone was friendly but guarded, the tone of someone dealing with a benefactor rather than a friend. "Morning," Celeste replied, matching his casual air. "Business looks good. Getting there." He gestured to their expanded selection, added oatmeal raisin and white chocolate macadamia, figured variety couldn't hurt. Smart move. She hesitated, then added, "Hannah's been writing to me." Something flickered in Ryan's expression. "Yeah, she mentioned that. Sorry if it's weird." "I told her she didn't have to." "I love it," Celeste interrupted. "Her letters are the best part of my week." Ryan studied her for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether she was being genuine. Whatever he saw in her face must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. "She likes you, says you understand her. She's easy to understand. She's honest and kind and sees the world the way it should be rather than the way it is." "Yeah." Ryan's voice went soft. She got that from her mother. There it was again. Sarah, the woman who'd had everything Celeste had thrown away. Hannah's mother, Ryan's wife, the person who'd made him happy after Celeste had broken his heart. "I'm sorry I never got to meet her," Celeste said, and meant it. "She would have liked you." Ryan began arranging cookies, his movements precise and practiced. Sarah believed people could change, that everyone deserved second chances. She was better than most of us. The words hung heavy between them, loaded with everything unsaid. Second chances. Was that what this was? Or just two people trying to be civil for the sake of a little girl who believed in fairy godmothers? Before Celeste could respond, Hannah came running up from the direction of the restrooms, her face flushed with excitement. "Celeste, did you get my letter about the mermaid I saw?" "I did," and I wrote back. "Did you get mine yet?" "Not yet, but Daddy says mail takes a few days." Hannah grabbed Celeste's hand, tugging her toward the booth. Come on, we need your help. There's already a line. And there was. A small crowd of repeat customers and new faces drawn by the previous week's word of mouth. Celeste found herself falling into an easy rhythm with Ryan and Hannah, working as a team to serve customers and make sales. It felt natural in a way nothing else in her life did. No pretense, no performance. Just the simple satisfaction of working together toward a common goal. Ryan handled the money and customer questions. Hannah charmed everyone with her enthusiasm, and Celeste just enjoyed being useful in a concrete, immediate way. During a brief lull, Ryan said quietly, "You're good at this." "At what?" "Selling cookies?" "At connecting with people. You always were." He paused, then added, "I'm glad you haven't lost that." The comment surprised her. "You thought I had?" "I didn't know what to think. 7 years is a long time. People change. Not always in the ways that matter," Celeste said softly. Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but a family of tourists approached and the moment was lost. Yet something had shifted. Some small thaw in the permafrost between them. The market ran until noon. By 11:45 they were nearly sold out. Hannah did a little victory dance behind the table while Ryan packed up their supplies. His movements more relaxed than Celeste had seen them. "Same time next week?" Celeste asked as they prepared to leave. "If you're offering," Ryan replied. Then, after a hesitation, "Hannah would like that. She talks about you all week." "Just Hannah?" The question slipped out before Celeste could stop it. Too revealing, too hopeful. Ryan's eyes met hers, and for a second she saw past his defenses to the boy she'd known, the one who'd loved her with his whole heart. "Yeah," he said finally, his voice rough. "Just Hannah." But the way he looked at her suggested otherwise. As they walked to the parking lot, Hannah between them chattering about the cookies they'd sold, Celeste felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Dangerous, reckless hope that maybe, just maybe, some doors could be reopened. Some mistakes could be fixed. "Hey," Ryan said as they reached his vehicle. Not the truck Celeste remembered, but an older sedan that had seen better days. "You asked about my Harley the other day. The blue one. I remember. I still have it. Keep it at my buddy's garage since there's no parking at my apartment. I work on it sometimes when I need to think." He looked embarrassed. "Hannah mentioned you'd asked about it. She said you'd take me for a ride along the coast sometime." Ryan's eyebrows shot up. "She said that?" "She did. Was she wrong?" For a long moment Ryan said nothing. Then, "Saturday afternoon after we pack up here, if you want." Celeste's heart hammered. "I want." "Okay then." He opened the car door for Hannah, who was already buckled in and waving goodbye through the window. Saturday afternoon. As he drove away, Celeste stood in the parking lot feeling like a teenager again, nervous and excited and terrified all at once. A motorcycle ride wasn't a date. It was just two old friends catching up. Nothing more. Except it felt like more. It felt like standing at the edge of something vast and unknown, with the choice to step forward or step back. And Celeste, who'd spent 7 years playing it safe, choosing security over risk, ambition over heart. Celeste was tired of stepping back. Saturday afternoon couldn't come fast enough. Saturday afternoon arrived with perfect clarity. Blue skies, gentle breeze, the Pacific sparkling like crushed diamonds. Celeste pulled up to Mike's motorcycle repair, her heart racing. Several bikes sat in the lot, but only one caught her attention, a gleaming Harley-Davidson in deep blue, chrome polished to mirror perfection. Ryan emerged from the garage wiping his hands on a rag. He'd changed. Worn jeans and a black leather jacket that made him look dangerous in a way that sent butterflies through Celeste's stomach. "You came," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "You thought I wouldn't? I thought you might come to your senses." He gestured to the Harley. "This isn't exactly your world. Maybe I'm tired of my world," Celeste said quietly. Something shifted in Ryan's expression. He handed her a helmet, a well-maintained one that fit perfectly. He'd remembered her size after all these years. Ryan swung onto the bike with practiced ease, the machine rumbling to life. Celeste climbed on behind him, her arms wrapping around his waist. This close she caught his scent, motor oil and leather, and something uniquely Ryan that made her dizzy with memory. "Ready?" he called over the engine. She pressed closer, her cheek against his shoulder blade. "Ready." The world blurred as they accelerated onto Pacific Coast Highway, wind whipping against them, the ocean constant to their right. Celeste tightened her grip around Ryan's waist, feeling his warmth through the leather jacket. She'd forgotten this feeling, the exhilaration of speed, the way the bike leaned into curves, the absolute trust required. Ryan drove with complete confidence, his body relaxed in a way she'd never seen at the hotel. Here, on this machine, he was entirely himself. They rode for miles, following the coastline north. Each curve revealed new vistas, dramatic cliffs, hidden coves, beaches where seabirds wheeled overhead. Finally, Ryan pulled off at a secluded overlook. The view was breathtaking, cliffs dropping to churning surf below, the horizon endless. They dismounted, removing helmets. Celeste's legs felt shaky, her cheeks flushed from the wind. "I'd forgotten how beautiful it is," she said, moving to the cliff's edge. "I come here sometimes," Ryan said, "when I need to think, to remember who I was before everything fell apart." "Who were you?" "Doesn't matter. That person's gone." "I don't believe that." She reached for his hand. "You're still Ryan. You don't know me anymore, Celeste. 7 years is a long time. Then tell me. Help me know you again." Ryan looked at their joined hands, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture so familiar it made her chest ache. "Sarah was pregnant when we got married. 3 months along, terrified. We'd only been dating 2 months. A rebound for both of us after you ended things. I barely knew her, but she was kind and gentle and she needed someone. So I proposed. We figured we'd make it work." Celeste's heart constricted. "Did you love her?" "Not at first. It wasn't the grand passion I'd had with you, but it was good. Steady. She knew I didn't love her the way I'd loved you, and she accepted that. She said love grows if you tend it carefully enough." His voice grew softer. "And she was right. By the time Hannah was born, I loved Sarah deeply. Maybe not the same way, but completely. More than enough. I'm glad you had that," Celeste whispered, and meant it. "When she got sick, it destroyed us. Stage 4 breast cancer, aggressive. She lasted 6 months after diagnosis. 6 months of watching her fade, of trying to explain to Hannah why Mommy was getting thinner, weaker. 6 months of pretending I wasn't falling apart." His eyes glistened. "Near the end, when she could barely speak, she made me promise something. She made me promise I'd let myself be happy again. That I wouldn't use her death as an excuse to shut down, to stop living. You've kept that promise. Look at how you are with Hannah. Hannah's easy. She's my purpose. But letting someone else in? That's harder. Is that what this is? Letting me in? I don't know. I've spent 3 months selling cookies to feed my kid. You run hotels. What future could we have? Maybe the one we were supposed to have before I ran." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I was 18 and terrified, so I chose what seemed safe. College, career, and I lost you. I've regretted it every day since. I married Marcus because he was appropriate, but I never loved him the way I loved you." Ryan cupped her face. "You wrecked me, Celeste, but seeing you again, watching Hannah fall for you, I don't know if I can survive losing you twice." "Then don't lose me." She covered his hands. "Let me choose you this time. I'm broke, unemployed, living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I can't give you mansions. I don't want those things. I want late-night conversations and motorcycle rides and a little girl who writes me letters. I want you, Ryan." He kissed her then, and it was like coming home. When they broke apart, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. "There's something you need to know about Sarah." Celeste's heart stuttered. "What?" "Sarah sought me out after we broke up. It wasn't random. She knew your mother. They worked together on charity boards. Your mother had mentioned you were at Stanford, that you'd broken up with some local boy, that it was all for the best. Sarah felt sorry for me, decided to help me move on. It started as pity, but it became real." He took a shaky breath. "When she got pregnant, she said maybe it was meant to be, that maybe Hannah would give us both purpose. And she did, more than I could have imagined." Celeste wiped her eyes, processing this new information. "She sounds like an amazing woman." She was. "And you know what? She'd want me happy now. She'd probably like you. She used to say everyone deserves a second chance at their first love." Ryan pulled out a worn photograph from his jacket. Sarah holding baby Hannah, both of them smiling. "When she was dying, she told me Hannah was the universe's apology for what we'd both lost, a gift to help us heal. I can see why you loved her," Celeste said softly, studying the photo. "I did. Differently than I loved you, but completely." Ryan tucked the photo away carefully. "But she's gone, and I'm still here, and you're here, and maybe, just maybe, that means something." "It means we get a second chance," Celeste said firmly. "Not to replace what we had before or what you had with Sarah, but to build something new, something that honors our pasts without being trapped by them." Ryan studied her face, searching. What would that even look like? You in your penthouse, me in my apartment? You at charity galas, me selling cookies at farmers markets? How do we make that work? We figure it out together, day by day, choice by choice. I don't have all the answers, Ryan, but I know that working beside you these past weeks has been the happiest I've been in years. I know Hannah's letters are the highlight of my days. I know that when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be before I got lost trying to become who everyone expected. And if it doesn't work, if the reality of our different worlds tears us apart again, then at least we'll know we tried. But I don't think that's what will happen. I think we're both different people now. Older, scarred, maybe wiser. We understand what really matters. She squeezed his hands. And what matters is this. You, me, Hannah, building something real. The rest is just details we'll figure out as we go. Ryan pulled her close, and this time the kiss was deeper, slower, full of promise and possibility. His lips were warm against hers, tasting of salt air and hope. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in breathtaking shades of gold and rose. We should head back, Ryan said reluctantly, his arm still around her. Hannah's with Mike, but I promised we wouldn't be long. Can I meet her again? Properly, I mean. Not as the fairy godmother from the hotel, but as the woman I'm dating? Ryan finished, a small smile playing at his lips. Are we dating now? If you're willing to date a guy who drives a 15-year-old sedan and considers Taco Tuesday a major splurge, Celeste laughed. A real, full laugh that felt like freedom. Only if you're willing to date a woman who has no idea how to turn on her own oven and once paid someone $300 to teach her how to make toast. Ryan's eyebrows shot up. You didn't. I absolutely did. In my defense, it was a very complicated European toaster. They rode back as the sun set, the sky blazing with colors. At the garage, Hannah burst out, her face lighting up. Daddy, Miss Celeste, did you have fun? The best, Ryan said, scooping her up. He looked at Celeste. Want to get dinner? Just the diner down the street. I'd love that. At Joe's diner eating burgers while Hannah told stories about the frog she'd found, Celeste realized what she'd been missing. Genuine connection with people who saw her as simply Celeste. Ryan took her hand across the table. Hannah grinned knowingly, but returned to her animated story about how Prince Frederick had jumped 6 feet high. Later, after Ryan walked her to her car and Hannah hugged her goodbye, Celeste sat in her BMW and let the tears come. Happy tears. Relief tears. She texted Ryan, "Thank you for today. For the second chance I don't deserve but will spend every day trying to earn." His response came quickly. You don't have to earn it. You just have to stay. She smiled through tears. I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. I promise. She drove home to her mansion, but it didn't feel as empty anymore, because she understood now that it was just a house. Home was wherever Ryan and Hannah were, and for the first time in 7 years, Celeste Davenport knew exactly where she belonged.